Ever since I was young, I've always felt like stress was some sort of a curse. It's awkward and invasive bodily reaction that made me feel like I was losing control every time that it happened. And I'm sure you know the feeling too. Your whole body enters this fight or flight response. Your heart rate elevates, your breathing gets heavier, your throat feels like it's closing up, and it just seems like your whole blood is being flushed out of your body. And all the time you hear doctors, the news, people, and even probably your parents telling you how much stress is bad and how negatively it impacts your health. Relax, take a break, stop stressing so much. Useful advice, right? Do you feel any more stress relieved and in control of your fate after these powerful statements? This just doesn't do it for me. And if you're watching this, I suppose it doesn't move the needle for you either. No one ever tells you that stress can also be the most powerful tool for motivation, productivity, and performance. That's if you learn how to use it and react to it properly. It's the dose that makes the poison. And in a sense, they're not wrong telling you that stress is a poison. Long term exposure to stress is highly detrimental because it wears out your whole body way too quickly, as the response is immensely demanding. But think about this. Mother Nature did not implement this system in almost all, if not all of them, living organisms on this planet for nothing. This reaction is precisely what preserved your ancestors' lives. Stress is highly adaptive and necessary for life as you know it. The stress response is an acute mobilization of the whole body. And when stressed out, your body is basically on steroids, deploying to 100% of its capacity, which is great in the short term. And I presume that almost no one ever told you that. So it goes like this. It's basically you seeing, hearing, or thinking about something, also called a stressor, which most of the time is external, so coming from your environment, but it can also be internal. That stressor triggers a stress response, which makes sense. And after your mind has treated the information, your body then secretes hormones that activate this stress response. Stress is basically a signal going through your blood telling your brain and body, we have to do something. Here's more energy for you to fight this thing. And you cannot blame the stress response. It's an automatic reaction of the nervous system to a stressor. That is something that's embedded in you, basically. And stress is part of life and necessary for you to be alive, functional, and mobilized. And it truly is the dosage that makes the poison because, yeah, if you stress for too long, you will develop diseases. You know that. But without this stress response, you'd also be laying on the couch with no desire to move whatsoever, essentially waiting for your own death. More than a quarter of US adults say that they're so stressed they can't function. Now that's the real problem. Everyone is stressed the hell out. And that's not the good kind of stress that we're talking about right now. That can be explained by the fact that if the demands of society have greatly changed over the last decades, your stress response is essentially the same as your ancestors. Keep in mind that your stress response is naturally highly adaptable. This means that the intensity of the triggers needed to activate your stress response will depend on how sensitive your stress system is. The thing is that most people have no idea how to treat stress and therefore they can't manage it. Most people are scared the living hell out of it and they want to avoid the trigger at all costs. And this is why some people, if not a lot, will seek numbing behaviors like smoking, drinking, playing video games, scrolling, which will temporarily alleviate the stress response. You don't want to do that too often because when the stress response is out of control, it is very likely that this is the very thing that controls your life. And I understand that because I'm someone that tends to be very activated, very stressed out on a daily basis. And for a long time, I thought that stressing was wrong. I was telling myself that stress is bad. And if I'm stressed, it means that I must be doing something wrong. Meanwhile, stress is simply a natural response to a stressor again. And after researching and studying stress, I understood one key concept that changed my whole perspective on it. Stress is a generalized response, it isn't selective. It's a non-specific response of the body to any demand, whether it's a bear chasing you or your boss calling you in the office. Your body has the same physiological reaction. Now, of course, the intensity varies, but that's a major problem because it means that whatever you evaluate as stressful will trigger this autonomic response. More than that, if the reaction is non-specific, the triggers, however, are, and they depend on your life experiences. Phobia is the extreme example of that. If you're arachnophobic, then seeing a spider will trigger the stress response to max level. Meanwhile, in comparisons, when I see a spider, I think about Peter Parker, and that's pretty much it. And the stress response is insidious because as long as the stressors are present, your body will keep reacting to them. So if the stressors in your life right now are your relationship and your job, for example, this means that you'll be stressed out on a daily basis since you're in contact with those two things every day. And that's exactly what you have to learn to effectively assess your stress levels. Because the last thing that you want is to only be aware of it when you're about to break down. Stress accumulates, and by listening to the signals, you can have a very good idea of how much stress you're under. But for that to happen, you need to pay attention to your body. There are several domains in which excess stress will easily manifest. Your ability to sleep, to focus, your body tension, are good indicators of your stress levels. That being said, the most important thing by far is your sleep quality. And if you can fall and stay asleep at night, stress while uncomfortable is far less damaging. So that's your threshold, okay? As long as your sleep allows good recovery, you know that your stress levels are manageable. When sleep takes a hit, not good. Your mindset dictates whether stress is poison or steroid. There's a whole side of stress that shows that it can have enhancing qualities on your cognitive functioning or physical health and how we behave and interact with others. Joy, happiness, and relief exist because stress does too. More than that, you're stressed because you care, and that's very important. If you were indifferent to the situation, your body wouldn't bother activating the stress response. Now imagine person A who is consumed by stress and person B who's able to handle and use stress as their most potent source of energy. Considering that the stress response is generalized and present in all individuals, the difference doesn't really lie in the reaction itself, but in the mindset these two personas use to view it and interpret it. To the body, there's no such thing as good stress or bad stress. Stress is simply and only a physiological reaction to the environment, to what's happening. You don't get to choose if you're stressed or not, but you get to choose how you respond to it. And ultimately, that's more important than the stress itself because you cannot avoid it. That's where your mind comes into play. Your interpretation of stress will be the tool you can use to turn stress from poison to steroid. And it all comes down to control, perceived control that you think you have about a certain situation. When you truly think about it, stress is debilitating only if you feel like it's an unwanted invasion of your body. But what if stress was instead your body mobilizing all its resources to help you fight the thing that triggered it? You don't have to undergo stress. You don't have to avoid it and you don't have to die from it. You can use it by simply reframing your mindset and leveraging how it works. For example, in my case, my body provokes a stress peak every time that I enter the gym. And I get this kind of adrenaline rush, if you will, which I use to push intensity during my workouts. And in that case, you could say that this stress reaction is in fact highly beneficial because it gives me energy, motivation, and focus to train effectively. It literally acts as a stimulant that energizes my whole body. Now, I view this now as beneficial because I have control over it, but it wasn't always the case, and certainly wasn't the case a couple of years ago. The exact same body sensation was the very reason why I dreaded going to the gym. Yet, this is the exact same physiological reaction. It's just that now I feel like I have control over it and I can leverage it instead of suffering from it. And that's major insight I got. The changes in your cognition, in your thinking, and about how you cultivate stress, because the thought patterns associated with the stress response are what direct your behavior ultimately. And if you tell yourself that stressing is only going to ruin your chances of performing, then that's what will happen. If you convince yourself that internally that stress is bad and it's killing you, then it will. Now, keep in mind here, I'm not talking about life or death situation. Of course, I'm talking about everyday life kind of stress. And at the end of the day, you're the only one putting thoughts into your own head, and you get to choose how you react to your life. But just know that you can start to use your thoughts and beliefs to profoundly change the way you view stress, and you can start using it to maximize your performance. And now, ladies and gentlemen, now's the moment you've all been waiting for. How to stop stress from ruining your life and turn it into a performance booster. First of all, you need to identify the manifestations of your stress response. You have to know them. There are a lot of different symptoms of stress, but for example, elevated heart rate, rapid breathing, blurry vision, sweating, blood rushing through your legs, and lightheadedness are common manifestations of the stress response. You don't have to know all of them. This isn't the point. You simply need to be aware of the main symptoms that are most easily recognizable in your case. Your goal is to be able to assess your stress levels at all times and to base your judgment on those body reactions. For example, when I'm stressed out, I feel tension in my neck and shoulders, and my breath becomes shorter and quicker. And I know that these are the best cues to tell me that I'm currently under a lot of stress without it being an over the top reaction. It's real time feedback from your body. That's how you need to treat these symptoms. Become conscious of how your stress response manifests, and you'll start to have control over it. Next, you need to reframe your mindset. Stress is a mobilization tool, not a killer. And if you believe that stress is only harmful, then it will be. But if you see it as a source of energy, you'll have the edge. Think about it. It wouldn't make any sense for your body to trigger a reaction that is damaging to it. You need to work on actualizing your beliefs and make peace with your stress response. Stress is an inherent part of life and serves a specific purpose. There's a whole other side of stress that you probably don't see right now because you're focusing too much on the negative aspect. Stress pushes you to do something. It's behind all the achievements in your life. More than that, stress has been your protector ever since you were born. Thanks to that system, you've avoided a lot of trouble. Remind yourself that it's just your body temporarily supporting you by sending more resources to overcome the obstacle that you're facing. After that, you need to learn how to regulate the intensity of your stress response when it happens. When you take an objective look at it, intensity is the real problem. Too much stress is debilitating, while medium stress is useful for activation and optimal performance. And if the intensity is too high, then you won't be able to use the stress response as a weapon and you'll suffer from it. Now, here are the two most potent tools that I found to instantly lower the intensity of the stress response in real time. First, there's a breathing pattern that Andrew Huberman talks about in the episode of Mastering Stress called the physiological sigh. This pattern consists in 2 quick inhales to fill the lungs rapidly, followed by an extended exhale. This will basically tell your heart to slow down and your overall body to calm down. Additionally, when you find yourself in a stressful situation, you have to learn how to remove yourself from stressors and stimuli to focus on regulating your reaction for a minute. That is also called temporary retreat, and it's very effective. And the last thing is that you need to use stress. Finally, once you're familiar with your stress response and how to regulate it to manageable levels, then you can start to leverage it. This will be the most effective tool that you can use to win against procrastination. And I'm convinced that stress is more powerful than motivation. You have to be stressed if you want to produce your best work. However, this stress has to be controlled. Stress isn't bad. Too much stress for too long is. Short-term stress, when handled and welcomed, is the best thing you can use to move the needle of your life. Soon enough, if you go through these steps and experiment, you will be able to use the full power of stress and achieve your goals, overcome obstacles, and drastically improve your performance using it. So I hope this helps. As always, trust the process.